In the last few weeks, the bodybuilding world was hit with yet another tragic news. The sudden death of an athlete who, up until that point, seemed to be in peak physical condition. Stuff like this always catches us off guard, especially when it's someone young, disciplined, and looking like the picture of health. But is that healthy look really telling the whole story? What's behind these increasingly frequent losses in the sport? That's where this conversation begins. So tell me, have you ever stopped to wonder if the lifestyle that looks healthy on the outside is actually healthy on the inside? When you see a bodybuilder on stage, shredded and commanding attention, it's hard to imagine the sacrifices, the extremes, and, the real risks that come with it. But every time a tragedy like this happens, the same questions pop up. Was it the steroids? Could the body handle that much strain naturally? And why are so many athletes dying young? Of course, we can't just point fingers and say, that's what did it. But turning a blind eye to all the warning signs and patterns wouldn't be smart either. The bodybuilding community has lost a number of athletes in recent years, and it's become a serious wake-up call. Is the sport itself, at least the way it's being practiced today, pushing athletes to the edge? Or are we talking about personal choices that push the human body way past its limit? The truth is, a lot goes down far away from the stage lights and cameras. There's a darker side behind the perfect aesthetics, one that involves pressure, constant comparison, chasing quick results, and often using substances that promise performance, but come with a steep price. Have you ever really thought about what's at stake when someone makes their physique the center of their entire life? This video is an invitation to reflect. We're not here to accuse anyone. We're here to ask the hard questions. Are we glamorizing a lifestyle that, deep down, might be self-destructive? How many more athletes need to die before we start facing these risks head-on? And more importantly, why are so many staying silent, even with all the signs right in front of us? Let's talk about all of this with respect, facts, and transparency. We'll dig into what might be causing these deaths and why steroids always seem to be at the center of the conversation. And of course, we'll talk about what's blown out of proportion, what's real, and what can actually be done to keep the dream of stepping on stage from turning into a nightmare. Are you sticking with us till the end? If so, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications because this conversation matters. It could even save lives. When an athlete dies, the shock is immediate. But what about everything that happens before that? What goes on behind the scenes, away from the public eye? Most people only see the spotlight, the trophies, the sculpted muscles. They have no idea what's sacrificed to get there. There's a silent and dangerous culture in the sport that needs to be talked about. And it starts long before competition day. In many cases, the very coaches who are supposed to guide and protect these athletes end up pushing them too far. The obsession with fast results turns prep into a game of Russian roulette. Massive doses, risky protocols, barely tested substances. These things become routine, like it's just part of the grind. But where does health fit into all of this? Sadly, the term death coaches has become more and more common. And as harsh as that sounds, it perfectly sums up the kind of so-called professionals we're calling out here. They hand out extreme protocols, skip over blood work, ignore clear warning signs from the body. For them, it's all about the trophy, the insane physique, and the shocking before and after pic for social media. The athlete? Just another walking billboard. Now, let's be fair, not everyone's like that. There are legit professionals out there who actually care about health and know when to say enough before pushing any kind of protocol. And what about you? Have you ever stopped to ask who's behind the results of the athletes you admire? Is it someone who really prioritizes safety? Or could it be one of those so-called death coaches disguised as a savior? A lot of times, the athlete just doesn't know enough to question things and ends up putting blind trust in someone who's supposed to have their best interests at heart. The real problem is systemic. There's this nonstop pressure for performance and visibility. Social media fuels it. Bigger physique, bigger engagement. And in that kind of environment, health often takes a back seat. So who pays the price in the end? The athlete, with their life, their liver, their heart. And a lot of this could have been avoided with more awareness and responsibility. The recent death of a female bodybuilder really shook people. sparking a flood of questions online. She was young, disciplined, just starting to make a name for herself. How can someone so dedicated to health and fitness have their life cut short so suddenly? Was it just a tragic coincidence? Or was there something more going on behind the scenes? And that's where the debate begins. Was this truly just a random event, like something that could happen to anyone? Or was it the result of a high-risk lifestyle filled with invisible dangers? Long-term, poorly supervised steroid use can seriously mess with your cardiovascular system. We're talking high blood pressure, heart enlargement, messed up cholesterol, artery inflammation. All of that is real. And even if an athlete is getting regular checkups, some of the damage doesn't show up until it's too late. Could that be what happened here? And let's not overlook surgeries. A lot of athletes go under the knife for cosmetic tweaks, things that aren't always necessary, but are part of chasing that perfect look. After years of intense cycles and physical stress, the body's already under a ton of pressure. Add a surgery on top of that, and it can be the breaking point. But hold up, we're not here to say for sure that this is what happened. The point is to spark reflection. Are these deaths really just bad luck? Or are we normalizing tragedies that should be red flags? I mean, do you really believe it's just coincidence when so many athletes are dying way too young? These kinds of tragedies should make us stop and think. What's going on with the sport? With this culture of performance at any cost? And with the athletes themselves, many of whom know the risks but choose not to talk about them? There's a collective silence that needs to be broken. Let's talk about something super important now. Something barely anyone brings up, the stress on a bodybuilder's heart. It's easy to look at someone jacked and assume they're all muscle and health. But the human body has limits, and even though the heart's a strong muscle, it's not immune to wear and tear. Here's the deal. The more muscle mass you carry, the harder your cardiovascular system has to work. And that can take a serious toll. Did you know that a super heavyweight bodybuilder's heart might actually be under more stress than someone who's obese? Sounds wild, right? But it's true. Fat doesn't need much blood flow. Muscle, on the other hand, is active tissue. It constantly demands oxygen. So the more muscle you've got, the more blood has to be pumped through your body. And guess who's working overtime to make that happen? Yep, your heart. Now think about this for a second. When an athlete has a massive physique, is taking substances that crank up blood pressure even more, and trains with crazy intensity on top of that, the heart ends up working at full throttle all the time. It's like putting the engine of a small car in charge of hauling a semi-truck. It's going to break down eventually. And sadly, that's exactly what happens to a lot of these athletes. On top of that, many steroids mess with cholesterol levels, raise blood pressure, and cause inflammation in the arteries. Combine that with the natural strain of carrying all that muscle, and you've got the perfect storm for heart attacks, arrhythmias, and even sudden death. And the scariest part? This can happen even when the athlete looks like they're in great shape. Have you ever really stopped to think about this? It's the kind of info you don't see on social media, in hype videos, or backstage at competitions. But it's real, and it can completely change the way we look at the sport. Because what's at stake here isn't just a physique. It's a life. That's why regular heart checkups should be standard for any high-level athlete. We're talking echocardiograms, stress tests, full blood panels. All of that can catch red flags before it's too late. But a lot of people skip this stuff because they're afraid of hearing they need to slow down or stop. And that fear, it can be deadly. Now that you got a better idea of how much stress a bodybuilder's heart is under, let's dig even deeper. What exactly do steroids do inside the body? When an athlete chooses to use these substances, they're taking on some serious risks. And we're not just talking acne or hair loss. We're talking deep, long-term changes to how the body functions. Some of them irreversible. First up, blood pressure. Many steroids cause significant water retention, which increases the pressure inside your arteries. That forces your heart to work even harder and ramps up the risk of heart attacks and strokes. And the worst part? That spike in pressure doesn't always come with warning signs. The body just keeps collecting stress until it can't anymore. Next big issue, cholesterol. These substances tend to raise LDL, the bad cholesterol, and lower HDL, the good kind. That combo is a straight-up recipe for clogged arteries, fatty plaques and serious cardiovascular complications. It's like blocking up the plumbing in your house and then cranking the water pressure to max. And there's more. Steroid use also raises hematocrit levels. That's the percentage of solid cells in your blood, like red blood cells. The higher that number, the thicker your blood gets. And thicker blood means higher chances of blood clots, strokes, and neurological issues. It dramatically increases the risk of a clot reaching your brain or heart. To put it simply, it's like the athlete is forcing their body to run at 120 miles per hour, non-stop, without ever pulling over to change the oil. The engine overheats, the parts wear out, and sooner or later, it all shuts down. That constant metabolic overload puts huge strain on the liver, kidneys, and heart. And unlike muscles, you can't see those organs in the mirror. After everything we've gone through so far, one thing's clear. Using steroids and living the extreme bodybuilding lifestyle demands serious responsibility. And it all starts with one word most people ignore: medical supervision. Getting regular checkups isn't some luxury. It's a basic necessity when you're pushing your body to the limit. But let's be real, the reality is far from ideal. A lot of athletes, especially amateurs or newbies, don't even have health insurance. Some don't get more than a single blood test a year. And when they decide to hop on gear, they dive headfirst into hardcore protocols with zero professional guidance. So how can we expect the body to handle that kind of stress without proper monitoring? The right kind of medical follow-up could catch red flags like high blood pressure, messed up cholesterol, or dangerously elevated hematocrit before they turn deadly. A simple test could literally prevent a tragedy. But due to a lack of information or straight-up negligence, it's treated like a small detail. And in this case, that small detail could cost a life. Here's another major issue: the quality of the substances being used. Ever stop to think if what's inside that vial is really what the label says it is? A lot of steroids are bought on the black market. No regulation, no quality control, and sometimes they're not even the compound you think you're using. There are athletes injecting oil, solvents, or sketchy mixes without even knowing what's in them. The lack of regulation and easy access to fake products only cranks the risk up higher. And even when the gear is legit, if there's no medical supervision, it's still a ticking time bomb. Because it's not just about what you take, it's about how much, how often, and how your body's actually reacting to all of it. When was the last time you got your blood work done? Do you even know your cholesterol levels, blood pressure, or liver function? Even athletes who do everything right, regular checkups, working with doctors, following safer protocols, still face one wild card: genetics. Everyone's body reacts differently to steroids, and that difference can be minor or deadly. What works perfectly for one person might absolutely wreck someone else. The problem? You don't know your limit until you cross it. Some athletes can take sky-high doses and show barely any symptoms. Others on the same protocol collapse with heart problems, liver failure, or blood clots. There's no universal guidebook, and your body doesn't come with a flashing warning light. The only way to find out how you'll react? Trial and error. And that error can cost everything. Imagine using a substance not knowing if your liver can handle it, or if your heart can take the pressure. It's like playing Russian roulette with your health. What's really scary is that most athletes only realize they've got bad genetics after something already goes wrong. A flag test result, a heart flutter, or a night in the ER. Just to give you an idea of how insane this can get, there are reports of athletes using up to 5 grams of testosterone a week. Yep, you heard that right, 5,000 milligrams. For comparison, traditional testosterone replacement therapy for someone with low T usually ranges from 100 to 200 milligrams per week. So we're talking about doses 25 to 50 times higher. That's an absurd amount for any body to handle. Do you really think every body was built to survive that? Of course not. And yet, there's this mindset of, if he did it, I can too. But genetics doesn't care about your ego. It collects the debt, and the price is steep. Worst part, it doesn't give you a warning. By the time your body speaks up, it's already at the edge. This genetic factor adds a terrifying layer of uncertainty. Even the most disciplined, well-informed athletes are at risk. That's why knowledge and awareness have to come before the decision. Because afterward, there's not always a way back. After covering so many physical risks, now it's time to talk about something most people completely overlook, but honestly, it might be the heaviest part of all: the mental health of the athlete. Behind the sculpted physiques and perfect stage poses, there's a quiet kind of suffering. Anxiety, insomnia, binge eating, the constant fear of losing progress. It's all part of daily life for many bodybuilders, and no one talks about it. To keep their physique on point, a lot of athletes turn to prescription meds. They take stimulants to stay laser-focused at the gym, then pop anti-anxiety pills to finally get some sleep. In some cases, meds like Vyvanse are used to suppress appetite and keep that dry look 24/7. The problem is, all of this messes directly with the nervous system, and over time, the mind starts to break down. Chasing the perfect body also puts you at odds with your own biology. That extreme physique, with almost no body fat, goes completely against what the body needs to function well. Fat isn't just extra weight, it's energy, protection, hormonal balance. When an athlete forces their body to stay shredded all the time, they're literally going against nature, and nature always fights back. And that backlash isn't just physical. Living in a constant war with your own body creates massive psychological stress. A lot of athletes end up stuck in a cycle of guilt, frustration, and harsh self-judgment. Eat a little too much, they feel awful. Lose a bit of definition, cue the mental spiral. The mirror stops being a motivator. It becomes a ruthless judge. So let me ask you, is it really worth it? At what point does this aesthetic pursuit justify all that mental suffering? The line between discipline and obsession is razor thin, and a lot of people cross it without even realizing. The real kicker? By the time they do notice, they're already hooked, not just on the substances, but on the validation, the look, the lifestyle. And here's the saddest part. Many athletes are ashamed to ask for help. In the bodybuilding world, showing weakness is almost taboo. So instead of opening up, they stay quiet. They keep posting smiley photos while silently falling apart inside. How many times have we heard stories like that, where someone suffered in silence until it was too late? So far, we've talked a lot about the athletes. But now comes the question that really flips everything. What about the people who aren't athletes? Why are so many everyday folks who don't compete, don't make a living off the sport, don't even step on a stage, putting themselves through the same risks? Steroid use among recreational users is rising fast. But at what cost? This is where the criticism hits even harder. Because if it's already dangerous for pros, even with guidance and medical support, just imagine the risk for people doing it totally on their own with no professional goal at all. Regular folks with 9 to 5 jobs, students, people living normal lives, pumping themselves full of heavy substances just to look a little better in a mirror or on Instagram. Like, what's the point? The truth is, it goes way deeper than vanity. We're talking about low self-esteem, insecurity, social pressure, the need to be accepted. A lot of people go down this road trying to fill an emotional void. They want to feel stronger, more attractive, more admired. But they end up trapped in an image that demands too much in return. And that's where the paradox kicks in. The better the body gets, the harder the mind pushes. Comparing yourself to other Instagram profiles, the fear of losing your gains, the constant feeling of never being good enough, it all starts to weigh heavy. A lot of people get into this thinking it'll make them feel better and end up with an even worse relationship with their body and themselves. Do you know someone who fits this description? Or maybe you've thought about going down that road yourself? This isn't about judging, it's about reflecting. Is it really worth putting your health at risk for no real reason, just to chase a result that's temporary and surface level? Is all this effort actually solving the right problems? The saddest part? From the outside, it might look like an overreaction, but for those living on the inside, it's all very real. That's why this conversation needs to go deeper than just muscles. We need to talk about mental health, self-acceptance, and finding a purpose that goes beyond the body. Because the body changes, but what's inside you, that's what sticks with you for life. Talking about all of this isn't easy. We get it. This is a sensitive topic, full of strong opinions and personal experiences. But that's exactly why this video exists. not to glamorize anything, not to shame anyone who uses steroids, but to shine a light on the risks of recklessness. Because at the end of the day, what's at stake here is your life. And no look is worth more than that. I've made mistakes myself. I've admired physiques without thinking about what was behind them. I believe some protocols were just part of the game. It took time for me to understand just how many people are walking around with a ticking time bomb inside them. So if this video made you stop and think, then it already did its job. And if it helps even one person avoid going down this path blindly, mission accomplished. We need to talk more about health, awareness, and responsibility. Looking amazing is great, but it shouldn't cost you your sanity, your health, or your life. The message here isn't don't use. The message is think, learn, understand the risks, and most of all, take care of yourself beyond just the mirror. If you like this content and think more people need to hear this kind of conversation, drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell. Seriously, it helps a lot and lets this message reach way more people. And of course, leave a comment down below. Have you been through something like this? Do you know someone who has? Let's talk.